Adam from Strategemata Games asked me if I'd be interested in looking at his Great Battles of Small Units. And as you can see in front of you, the game that I chose was Crete, the Fallschirmjägers' capture of the island in 1941. A rough overview: you get 4 A2 maps in the box, each one representing a specific area of Crete. There are 430 odd counters, the rule book obviously. There are 4 scenario sheets, which you can kind of see those in the front there. So board number 1, Malemi Airfield, that's a scenario sheet showing the Commonwealth setup. And then underneath those you'll see there are various things like Malemi Airfield, historical situation. There's 8 of those, and they are German setup sheets, but they offer alternative options as well. So, you know, historical situations or modified situations, I suppose, is the simplest way to put it. So that's it. Great Battles of Small Units, Crete. Let's have a little look and see what it's like. Okay, so at the beginning of this setup, you can see here I've got all the units on the map ready to go. We have the chart out in front of us here, and we have the initial activation suits for the various units, and I've just set them all to the Germans for the moment, because the first thing we do is we draw 3 cards, and this kind of sets the tone for the initiative. So we've got 3 of clubs, ace of clubs, 7 of clubs. Now that's quite interesting, because that means that what we would do is we would take all of these with the exception of the club and flip them over to Allied. So in other words, for the first activation, the Germans will have to draw a club to have their first initiative, and we draw 5 of hearts, so that means the Allies with the hearts have that first activation, so we can leave this in place here, and we would flip this counter so that next time when the card's drawn on turn 2, if it turns out to be either a heart or a club, it will be the Germans. If it turns out to be a spade or a diamond, it will be the Allies again. So that's how we begin. We'll then draw 2 sets of cards, which I'll just do this off map, off camera. What I've done there is I've drawn 5 cards for each side, and they're what I've started to call the command cards. This is a deck of cards each player has of their own. There's 5 cards in both hands. They can change or they can be altered through random events and various other things as the game progresses, but for now this is the command hand for the British. So let's just have a quick look at what the hand I drew for the Brits is. So we've got absolutely no royal cards, no kings, queens, aces, whatever, which is quite good because all of those count as a single point. All the number cards count as the value you see on the card. So we've got some quite decent numbers there. So as an example, to activate a formation would cost 2 points. To activate a support weapon in a separate hex would cost 1 point. So if we had a quick look, we might look in this area here, because here we have 2 battalions, each consisting of 4 counters, the 21st and the 23rd. So that would be 2 points, 4 points. Here we've got some tanks, 5 points, 6 points. So somewhere around the 6 marker would be quite nice to activate something like that. And I think because the Brits here have been lucky enough to get the initiative, And we know what the Germans are after. The Germans are either after this hilltop here, which we have defended by an element of the 22nd Battalion, or of course the airfield, because they wanted to bring in the mountain division as a backup for the Fallschirmjäger. So I think, as the Brits or the Commonwealth, our first duty must be to try and get as much as we can to Maleme to help out, or to Maleme airfield rather than just Maleme the village, to deny the Germans that. And I think, looking at these cards, you can kind of see, well, you know, I could put them in order like that. So those first three cards, the 2, the 3, and the 4, don't really give us enough impact. So I think we might as well spend 8 points if we can. So we'll play the 8 of clubs. That'll be our card this turn from the command hand. You do have an option. You could work out what you wanted to commit. So let's say we did that. We go 2, 4 for those 2 formations. 5, 6. We've got 2 more points. We might as well get something else going. So right down back here, we have a small light tank unit. I think we'll take them as well. So there's 7. Or actually, I was going to suggest the Maori unit, which is again further down that road. Maori's terrified the Fallschirmjäger, obviously. And we could activate them for 2 points, but yeah. It's a clever little mechanic here that you'll notice that the various companies of the 22nd, which the 22nd bore the brunt of the blame for losing the hilltop, because they struggled to coordinate and fight well together, and that's exactly what you've got here, through the simple mechanic of each of them being a separate formation. Yeah, I don't want to lose a point from my activation, so what I'm thinking is, from this 8, if we went with the 21st, 23rd, that's 4, 5, 6 for the 2 Matildas or Valentines, I think the Matildas, and another 2 for the 28th, and we can at least get them moving. Movement values are quite small in this. If I was to pick up this unit here and bring it a bit closer to the camera, hopefully that'll focus in. The blue box with the white 3 is the movement, so that's obviously leg movement, blue box, white number. The black 2 on the left is its firepower. The bracketed 2 in the middle is its range, and the red number on the right is the morale. You will notice, if I drop that off there, you notice if I pick that unit up, which is an HQ, we have the same leg movement. We have a firepower of 1, a range of 1, a morale of 5 again, and then you'll notice to the right of the actual NATO symbol there's a 3, and in brackets a 3, and that represents company support. So it's a strength of 3 with a range of 3. So the HQs can add either all 3 points to one individual fire, or obviously they could support 3 units with a strength of 1 in a turn. That's a neat little bit of support. Okay, we chose what we were going to do. We've accepted that we're spending that points, the eight points. Let's do some movement. So we've begun the movement phase. You can potentially see here 21st Battalion, I've started to move them along here, and we've taken this village here. Now, the reason why I've started with them is because the way the game works is if a unit moves within the range of a inactive unit, so the Germans are currently inactive, the Commonwealth are the active unit, you get a choice. So if, for example, if this unit had moved to here, we would have checked defensive fire from this guy, or he has the option to retreat a hex. So there's a bit of reaction to movement, if you like. So these guys could move without actually triggering anything. So that's why we've done those moves. I've actually moved, so down this road here, I've actually moved all but one battalion of the Maori troops. Because again, they can move without impediment. There is a company left further down this road, just one hex behind this hex, who I'm going to leave to move later because I'm trying to decide what to do here, because as you can see, there are German units that will have a bearing on what's happening in this area here. Probably a good moment to mention that having chosen your units to activate, you essentially have the option of performing one action with every unit. There is an exception to that, which is close combat, which obviously combines some movement for getting into the hex along with combat. But in general terms, the actions you can perform are movement, improve position, fire, or rally. And so it's quite simple, really. As I said, we effectively, what we've done is we've moved the units that can move without having to interact with the enemy. The units that are left all have some form of interaction at the moment. And the flip to that is, should the opposing units be disorganized due to fire, usually, and they would have a marker that shows a big D on it. Those units don't have that opportunity to defensive fire or defensive retreat. It's only units that are undisorganized. So as we see, all the German units currently have an option to react. So to begin, I think what we're going to try and do, because I want to try and free this unit up to move, is engage this Luftwaffe Fallschirmjäger unit here. You can see we've got an HQ, we've got the battalion HQ here, so he's got a support of 3 at a range of 3, and then we've got the unit itself, which is a 2 with a range of 2. So it's A23 that we're going to use to engage, but we'll use that support assistance from the HQ as well. The way we carry out the fire combat is we look at the defense strength first of all, or cover of the terrain. So Fallschirmjäger are in a clear hex, so there's no kind of bonus to that. But we would normally add the cover terrain to the morale, so we're going to start with a base of 6. So effectively we're looking to beat a 6. Because we have the initiative, our firepower is doubled, so we'll start with a 4, and then we'll add the 3 from the HQ, which will give us 7. And then we have again that option. So we could start with that 7, and we could play a card from our hand. So in a way, we could force a decision, if you like, because the reason I'm saying that is the way the combat resolution works is that if you get more, then the target unit will receive a disorganized marker. If you get twice as much, then it gets a loss as well as a disorganized marker. And obviously in this instance, that German unit that you can see in front of those guys is a single step unit. So that's quite a good result. I think because we know what we've got in our hand, we're currently sitting with a 7. We'd need 12. It would mean us throwing away our biggest hand in our biggest card in our hand if we were to want to kill that unit. So I think we'll take the risk on drawing a card from the deck. So we do that. And interestingly, we get a 10. So a 10 obviously gives us 17, which promptly kills that Fallschirmjäger unit. First casualty of the day. But as well, if you remember, or maybe I haven't discussed it at this point, but when you draw a straight 10, that is an ammo expenditure. So the allies will now move their ammo marker onto the 1. Again, if you recall, the ammo level for this scenario is 7 for the Commonwealth. If we get to 7, we can no longer do fire combat. So that was a good result for the allies there. Did exactly what we wanted to do. That HQ is still free to move, but the company obviously isn't because it did a fire combat. So he's complete. Now that frees this particular unit to move. So we'll go 1, 2, 3 into there. And I'm actually going to move these 2 companies from Mitochi. 1, 2, 3. If all of your movement is on a road, you get an additional bonus, so 4. So even though the movement allowance is 4, we can get them to the outskirts of Malem, a little bit closer to the airfield. Okay, now what that hasn't done is kind of what I wanted to do. Was I think I mentioned at the bottom of this area here, we have this little Maori unit. So he can move 1, 2, 3. Now, when he gets to there, the German unit, as I said, has an option. It can try and fire, or it could move. I would try and fire, but it's only a single shot, and you don't get the bonus double up because you aren't the active player. So I think we'll just retreat the hex out of the way. I say out of the way. It neatly puts us on the main road, which means the Commonwealth have got to do something to deal with them. Now that actually would be it. If I just move this camera a little bit here, and apologies for the shakiness, but if I just move that camera down so we can see the airfield, you can see there the tanks were moved up. So one is stacked with a flak unit on the edge of the airfield, and the other ones come around this side to try and again give cover support for people trying to engage us there. And that would be the Allies' first turn. Okay, we'll start the combat with the 23rd Battalion. We've got 2 targets in this hex, an HQ and an ordinary Fallschirmjäger. Now I think what we'll do is we'll start with A company. So they'll be 2 doubled to 4. And we'll commit 2 points from the HQ to take them to 6. So we are equaling the morale of the HQ unit. So that is 6 plus the value of a card, and the card we draw is 7 of diamonds. That's a good result. So that's more than double. Therefore, that's a step loss. So that's a kill on the HQ unit. Then we will follow that up with D company, 2 double to 4 again. Plus 1 gives us 5. Again, against a morale of 6. So 5 plus the draw of a card. Oh, 2 diamonds, so not so great that time. So that does still give us a hit, because that's 7, total of 7. So 7 points puts us a morale disorganized on there, sorry. That's those units moved. And you may notice I've also moved the units from Maleme up into the airfield. So that's 23rd Battalion finished. So now 21st Battalion, again, let's do that. Seems to be working for us reasonably well at the moment. So A Company, we'll start with 4. We'll commit all of the support to make it up to 7. So we're already 1 above the defense strength. So 7 plus a card, and we get King of Diamonds. Now that, like I've mentioned before, but just to reiterate, that's a single point, effectively. It's not a 10, as many people would see a royal card. It's a single point. So we did have 7, we've just gone to 8. So in other words, we have disorganized them, we haven't killed them. Also, King of Diamonds is a random card. King of Diamonds effect is a free rally, if you like. But obviously we don't have any Commonwealth units needing rallying. So you put the D onto this guy. What we then could do, so these guys are now complete. What we then could do is we could move for 1, move for 2, move for 1, move for 2, move for 3. And you'll notice there that I've deliberately gone into, and there was an option, but I've ignored it. I've deliberately gone into the German hex from 2 separate hexes. This is referred to in the combat in the game as coordination. So you're attacking from more than 1 hex, you get a coordination bonus, and in this instance it gives you an extra card. In terms of values. So the way we do the close combat, the inactive player, I think it is, yeah, the side without initiative, draws a card from the top of the deck and places it face down. Have I got space to put that in here? Just about there. We'll put, so that's the Fallschirmjäger's card. This is for this close combat here. Now normally they would draw a second card and place it face up, but because they have disorganized, they don't get that second card. Allies would then draw a card face down. Allies would draw a second card face up. Oh, that's a good one, a 9, big number. And then because I've mentioned coordination, this attack from 2 hexes, we get an additional card. That's not such a good number, so that's just a 6. So that's the cards drawn for the close combat. Now we just do the calculations. So we've obviously got a 6 minus 1, so that's a 5 in the hex, plus the value of this card. So that's an 11. This one goes to 11. These guys doubled obviously because of the having the initiative. So 2 to 4 plus 4, 8 plus 10. So that's 18. 23. So we've got a grand total of 23 for the Commonwealth, and 11 for the Axis. So that's obviously a Commonwealth victory. We both take step losses, so that will kill that Fallschirmjäger unit. Nowhere to run. The Commonwealth units will seize the hex, but one of them has to flip because you automatically take a casualty for having participated in the close combat. Clean up the cards. That would be the end of that phase. Was toying with moving 21st D from 21st Battalion, but I'm thinking at the moment I'm just going to leave them as they are. I think that's the safest. So that would be the end of the second activation. So why don't we have a quick draw of a card and see what we get for initiative for turn 3. We draw a card and lo and behold, it's a 7 of spades. Now, I don't know if anybody's keeping track of this in their heads, but we currently on our initiative markers have 3 markers showing Axis symbols. Those 3 markers are the hearts, the clubs, and the diamonds. So once again, the Commonwealth have managed to draw the correct suit. So turn 3 will again be a Commonwealth turn, but what that does mean is because we turn over the Commonwealth spade initiative marker, it now means that we're looking at a full row of initiative markers with Axis symbols on them. So regardless, next turn will be German. Now I think again, just thinking about that and looking at our hand. Oh, now the other thing that I just realized there and didn't dwell on, within that close combat, we drew the King of Spades. Was it the King of Spades? Yeah, King of Spades. Now, King of Spades is an excellent card for the Commonwealth at this stage because, as you will recall, we were down to 3 cards, and it means we get to refill our hand up to the level of cards it's allowed by the scenario, which is 5. So we've drawn 2 cards. Unfortunately, the gods weren't good to us. What we drew was the Queen and King of Hearts. Now, again, you see royal cards and you think they're big. No, they aren't. They're just single points. That gives us a really poor hand, with the exception of that 9 that we've got there. And what I'm reflecting on here is, with this final burst of initiative, I don't think the Commonwealth has any choice in this, in a way. I think we need to play that 9 of clubs. We need to say we are activating 9 points of formation. And that would be 2 here for the 21st, 2 here for the 23rd. So that's 2, 4, 6 for the 28. I'm going to go up another 2 points because we have the availability of artillery, which would take us to our 8. And then because we've got a point, I'm going to activate a tank unit. And I'm saying that just on the basis that support units are a single point. So I'm thinking that's what that's going to be. I'm going to just double check that this guy here, because this is a little tank company. I think these are those little like Mark 7s or whatever they were, those lovely little tankettes that the British Army was still trying to convince themselves were actually tanks at this stage of the war. But I think because they've got colours, they're going to come in as a formation rather than as a support unit. And the only other support units are probably on the map for the Allies are the flak units. And obviously, I don't really want to move a flak unit particularly. I'm trying to put as much there to make it as awkward as possible for the Germans around the notion of the airfield. Okay, here we go. I think we're going to start by trying to keep the pressure on these slightly more isolated Fallschirmjäger over here. And I think the way we'll do that has been successful so far is we'll hit this guy again with this company of the 23rd. And again, we'll throw in all the support from the HQ. And in fact, prior to that, what I'll actually do is I'll move the HQ up. We're outside of their ranges, so it doesn't affect anything. But it might give us a bit of a boost later on. So, open terrain again. No cover, just a 6. 2 double to 4. Adding 3 gives us 7. Plus, we'll draw a card. 12, 13. That's more than double. That's another kill. So that unit is gone. Now that's working well for the Commonwealth. Now, obviously, we've had 3 rolls, 3 turns on the trot. So it's an unusual situation, but I think we're managing to make the most of it as the Allies at the moment. Now, this unit is currently... Yeah, he's just fired. The HQ had moved. They are now complete. We've got the 2 units up here, who I'm going to leave them in place. In fact, what we could do is put them into improved positions. Not quite sure why everything has to be in improved positions, but it looks like that's how it kind of works. Okay, so we dug those guys in. What we will do is we'll take the opportunity to go 1, 2, 3, 4 with that guy. 4 being the bonus because we're permanently on a road. Yep, good to go. Then let's have a little look here. So again, we've got 2 units in this X, so we could start with B Company against this chap. 2, 4, 3 hexes from the HQ. Yeah, in this instance, I'll keep the HQ there. So again, that gives us 7 against... All right, it's a 5 because he's already got that -1 for disorganized. And we draw a card again, so 7 plus, wow, 7 plus 7, 14. Again, more than double. That's another hit on the Fallschirmjäger. Now that is starting to get a little bit of a thing because there is a instant... well, you probably have to call it an instant fail. It's an instant win for the Commonwealth. But there is a kind of emergency review of the scenario, which will happen quite a while off yet, turn 10. So it's kind of the midnight turn, if you like. It's the end of that first day. And why I'm saying that is because the 2 things are, 1, if they don't have any victory hex, so neither hex of the airfield, which is all about them getting their reinforcements in, I believe. And also lose 7 steps. And that step was the 5th step. So we're actually only 2 Fallschirmjäger steps away from a serious situation. So anyway, let's just see. I'm going to move the HE 1, 2. Yeah, we can't get him any further than that. We'll move him with him. Oh no, he fired. Actually, I think I fired with him. Yeah, I did, because he was there. what would it cost us to get into that orchard? It would cost us 1.5. 2.5. It would cost us 2.5 to get into that hex. So we'll push him forward to block that road there. Yeah, let's just move him. Let's try and keep this battalion a little bit together. Into there. So that's the 21st accounted for, 23rd accounted for, 28th. 1, 2, 3. Bonus 0.4. This is the Maoris trying to get themselves into the action. 1, 2, 3, 4. What is the stacking in an orchard? It is only 2. So one of those companies will have to stay back. Okay. Now what that leaves is the tank. Now again, I'm just going to reposition the camera slightly to get us into this place here. Yeah, it's quite heartbreaking because obviously the bulk of the Fallschirmjäger are actually here, edge of the map. But they haven't had a chance to do anything at all yet. Which makes me think this is probably the really bad idea. But what we're going to do is we're going to move there for 1 and there for 2. Now, as we move into there, the Fallschirmjäger do have the option now they're in the open there, and I don't like that. So I think I'm going to take the opportunity to move those 2 units, the HQ and that unit, out to there. But then we have an opportunity of defensive fire from the flak gun. Now, the way defensive fire works is we draw a card and we compare it to the ammo level. So the ammo level we said was so we rolled a 2. So I think it's a single. Our ammo level is okay. That's actually a 0. So there is no defensive fire. So the tanks effectively got into that hex. What I'm then going to do, which was part of the activations at the beginning, if you remember, is I'm going to try and call down artillery on this hex here. Actually, I'm saying that I'm not. I'm going to call down artillery on this hex here. I like this hex better. Mostly because it's got 2 units in it, and the artillery, if we're lucky enough to hit, will affect everybody in that hex, and we would use the tanks, I suppose, to spot. So the first thing we have to do is check the aim. And what we do is we roll, oh, we don't roll, we draw a card, and it's a spade. Now, what is that? No, that's a club. So do we have any? That's a diamond, it's a heart, that's a spade. So the artillery missed this X and fell in this X because it's a spade. Okay. So our artillery fire so what have we got as a symbol? We've got a flak symbol there. So our fire is ×3. And I think our strength is just 1. Yes, it is. So 3 ones are 3. So we start off with a strength of 3. We add the value of a card. So we ended up with a 4. But as you can see here, the defense on its own is a 6. So that was a super unimpressive piece of artillery. It missed the target hex. It fell where the flak unit was, but it did absolutely no damage whatsoever. Not sure on the benefits of that there, since it cost me 2 points to actually have that involvement. And then I'm just thinking we have a queen of spades there. Okay, now that again is interesting because that random event is a change of orders. And it means that the initiative player in this instance can discard any number of cards and draw replacements from the deck. So as you recall, we had this, I think that's quite a dreadful hand. So that's 2 1s, a 2 and a 3. So I'm going to cash in that entire hand and draw back 4. So I don't think we get to draw ourselves back to the full 5, which would be the hand size, but I think we get to replace the ones we discard. Let's just have a quick look. Well, it's not much better. We've added a 10, but then we've got a 1, a 1, and a 2. But that's the allied hand. But actually, we're about to sit it out for a little while because, as you can just see, next turn is definitely Fallschirmjäger. So let's just draw a card. It's the Jack of Diamonds. Jack of Diamonds is the Jack of Spades. So we will flip Spades to the Allied side, Commonwealth side. Discard that. Now Jack of Spades again is a random event. And what that does is it allows us to disorganize an enemy non-motorized unit in a spade hex.
So let us have a little look. What is this hex here? That's a spade hex. That looks like a prime target. Trouble is, there's a good bit of stuff in there. But given that for us, Fallschirmjäger, as we are about to become, it's all about that. I think we have little choice. So I think we'll disorganize one of those units in there. Okay, let's start the German comeback. We're on turn 4, so we're kind of at halfway through the day, and this is the first time the Germans have got to go. So we've got a lot to do, and we need to do it very carefully because, as I mentioned before, we've already taken 5 casualties. We're 2 casualties away from being in a losing situation here. It's been a very grim start for the Fallschirmjäger. I think what we will start with is this this flak unit. You know, there's part of my head is thinking dig in and hold this position, but I don't think that's a go for the Fallschirmjäger on Crete. I think there is only one mode where the Fallschirmjäger come out of this well, and that is by being aggressive, unfortunately. And that may not work out well, but it's what we have to do. So I think what we're going to start with is we're going to use this flak unit here. And we're going to try and do something to this tank because that position is kind of key to causing problems for the defenders of the airfield. Yeah, I should just quickly rewind that slightly and talk about the activation. We do potentially have 2 airstrikes we could use. So we could expend, or we could look to expend 6 activation points to give us 2 airstrikes plus the formation, which is the rest of what's on the board. These guys you can see in here. Airstrikes are even more hitty-missy, if you like, than because we don't particularly have a lot of line of sight at the moment. We've got nothing to make the air call in more accurate. This is one of the few places, and it's adjacent, and I don't really want Stukas coming adjacent to my Fallschirmjäger at this point, just in case. Doubly so because there's an additional inaccuracy level added in because of the flak units, which, whereas with the artillery strike you saw before, we drew a card to get the suit where the thing then fell. To successfully hit a target hex when there is flak in it, you double it. You draw 2 cards. So you need to roll 2 of the correct suit. That all just is too much risk, I think. So the Fallschirmjäger are going to take the very simple option of the free activation of 1 formation, which is everybody on the map, basically. That was the choice that we decided on. We haven't really looked at the Fallschirmjäger hand. Having said that, if we just quickly grab this. Again, perhaps not the strongest hand in the world, but we've got a 5 and a 7 there, and then we've got 2 1s and a 3. It is what it is. We need to do what we can. So what I'm first of all going to do is attack with this unit against this unit. And I'm actually going to throw in the support from this HQ as well. So that'll give us an additional 2. So the way it works is we have a strength of 1, which we know because we are now the initiative player is doubled to 2. The allies, because that is a village, we have a cover of 2. So they're sitting with a 7 there basically in that hex. Now you will also notice on the counters, and I can't remember if we've touched on this before, but there is a tank anti-tank element to this game, which we can illustrate here because the tanks you will see above the armor symbol have a 2/2. Now that's the gun rating and the armor rating. Likewise, on the flak unit here, there's a gun rating of 1 and an armor rating of 3. So obviously in reality that's not really an armor rating, it's a small target bonus probably. Notoriously small little flak piece. Now the way that works is, apart from the 1 doubled to 2, we also do a comparison of the gun being fired against the armor being hit. So we've got a 1 there against a 2 gives us a -1. So we were firing with a 2. It goes down to a 1 because of the gun rating. Goes back up to a 2 and then a 3 because of the support. So we're basically looking at a 3 versus 7. And we're drawing a card. I'm hesitating to say we're drawing a card there because I'm just thinking if we've got 3 and they've got 7, we need a 5. And we have a 5 in our hand. I'm going to play that from the German hand. I'm going to play that 5 of hearts to give us what we need, which is a hit. A hit on that tank. So we disorganize that tank, and what that does is it blocks at least one of the areas where we would have had a little bit of trouble. In terms of defensive fire, we've just got rid of that. I'm sorry, I'm just distracted there. I'm just looking at this unit here, which again, he has a firepower of, he has a range of 2 and a firepower of 2, which means he can interdict here. Likewise, here we could interdict here. You see how important this is becoming, is because I think that's the first kind of entry against the Allies. Having said that, they would also obviously have a fire into there because it's adjacent. Yeah, this is going to be a tough old nut to crack. Anyhow, we have to try. Interesting as well, that HQ there is the only HQ we have. He said, yeah, it is. It's the only HQ we have that has support. So now, having used it, that was that. I'm not seeing a lot of options here other than brute force and ignorance. Let's just go 1, 2. Let's go. Well, we do move single units at a time. What that does is that would trigger the possibility of defensive fire from here. And again, the way that would work is we look at the yeah, I'm just sorry, I'm just reconsidering here. We look at the, so we draw a card which is a 3. We've got a -1, which would give us a 2. That gives us a defensive fire of 1. Now I think that's on that top unit there. So that unit can't, but that unit could. So let's do the same again. That's a 1. -1's a 0. 0 is no defensive fire. So we have 1 defensive fire possibility here. So we might as well take it. And we're looking at morale of 6 in a village +2. So we're looking at an 8. That defensive fire, because it's he obviously isn't the initiative player, it's only 2. So 2 plus 3 is 5. That's less. That's a miss. Defensive fire comes off. 1 and 2. Same argument again. I think let's resolve that. Let's resolve that close combat. So let us begin with the tank unit. You're drawing a card, and it's face down. And for the German unit, he's drawing a card and it's face down. The attacker draws a second card. Oh, that's a big number. Now we already know because of the D, we only draw 1 card, so that is our defensive value. Unfortunately for the Fallschirmjäger, we went in down this road because of the defensive fire problems protecting the hex. So we don't get any coordination this time, even though there's 2 units in the hex. So essentially, that is what it is. We have 6 doubled to 12 plus 10, 22 against 5 down to 4, 5, 6 for the village. So 6 plus, this is a defeat, 7. That tank unit is no more. But equally, one of those has to flip. But we captured that first village. Jack of Hearts gives us the opportunity to disorganize somebody in a heart. But it's looking good that we have nobody in a heart and we don't. Aha, aha. We do. So that Jack of Hearts causes a sniper attack. And we will choose to disorganize the stronger of the 2 there as the Commonwealth player. What else can we do? We removed the first threat. What else can we do? Yeah, we move him from 1, 2, following the road. Now again, we would get that defensive fire from there. Draw a card. 8. An 8. -1 for our ammo. Takes us to a 7. That would actually give us a 2. 2 defensive fires. So he would be 6, obviously, on the road. He would be 2. 2 plus, so we need more than a 4. It's a 5. It's nothing. His defensive fire would drop to a 1. We'd then go to there. I think that's... I was going to say that's line of sight. I'm going to let him fire again. He would be 6, 7, 8 now. And he'd still be a 2. 6 against 8. Miss again. 1, 2, 3. So he could move one more, but obviously the road unfortunately goes back down the hill. So I think we'll stay where we are. Actually, we should probably be paid 1 for going up the hill. So we'll live with that. Orchard costs us 1.5 for a leg unit. So we'll go 1.5. I shouldn't be moving these as stacks, by the way. Everything's done by single unit. Let's go 1.5. So that would cost 3 to get to there, and we wouldn't have any more movement points, so we're effectively done. So he'll just follow him up. That would be the Axis turn 4. Okay, hold on. I'm going to move. Move him to there. We would get fire. Actually, he'd already fired in this turn. They'd both done defensive fire in this turn. I'll have to look at that and see what the implications on. I think I'm going to wrap it there, to be honest. I just wanted to kind of show the various elements of fire, and I think we've done that. I think we've covered close combat, we've covered artillery, we've covered defensive fire, we've covered tank, anti-tank. I think it's just really now to have a little look and review what we've seen. So, ignoring the strange way this one kind of went with those first 3 turns going to the Allies and the bad position it put the Fallschirmjäger in, losing all those steps. And that's, it's far to say from it's done. But I do have a suspicion that in this particular variant of this scenario, the Germans are going to have a very uphill struggle to get... effectively we're on turn 5, and as I said, at turn 10, if the Germans lose 2 more casualties, they could well be in trouble. That apart, I think just this brief video gives a good insight into the mechanics of this system, which, when you are confronted with the rules initially, speaking from it, I have no idea how a Polish player would resolve it. I'm thinking a Polish player perhaps would find it simpler. There are a couple of things that I think are left a little bit open in the English version of the rules, which I've had the good fortune to be able to go back to Adam and have them resolved. And I think, all rules have that to an extent, greater or lesser extent. But I think there are some lovely little mechanics in this game. I love I love the formation activation. I think that's great. I think the deck of cards works really well. I love the randoms, the little things that throws in, which kind of drive it along, because you can spend some cards to force things that you want to do, and then the correct random card comes along and allows you to refresh your hand, and you're sort of invigorated again by it, or what was maybe an attack that was kind of going nowhere is suddenly reinvigorated by that. I think that's a great mechanic. I like the anti-tank tank. I think that's a good little mechanic. There is an awful lot to like about this, not least of which is how quickly it plays. I mean, you've just seen how we're doing that. Now, I guess, you could argue this is just one of the pieces of the Crete campaign, but I quite like that as well. I quite like the fact that rather than being the whole Crete thing, it's you can play it in these manageable bites. I have no doubt that you can add it together as the campaign. I'm not quite sure if that does allow you to play all the maps together, because all the maps seem to have a border on them. I'm thinking you probably play them as 4 individual parts simultaneously, and that gives you a thing. There's a few things that I haven't touched on. There are some interesting little random card draws which give you additional things for the Fallschirmjäger. So stragglers turning up, slightly stronger close combat bonuses, which are fixed close combat bonuses, little MG symbols which just give you a slightly improved combat strength. All of those things add flavour. Obviously, you've got additional reinforcements. You've got additional ammo. There's a lot of things to make it variable, to make it a more interesting game. I think it's a lovely little game. I think it's a shame that perhaps some English players have been slightly put off by the by things not being as clear as they could be, shall we say. And I think that it's a shame if that's the case. I would ask anybody who's had a look at these to maybe, give it a second chance, give it another run. I've actually produced some little pieces which I'll stick on the end of this, which is one of the things I do to try and clarify things in my own head before I come to play them. And don't get me wrong, there may well be things in this playthrough that I have misinterpreted. But Adam's very approachable. There is a mechanism for getting in touch and asking for clarification. Again, I would urge people who've maybe got to a certain point to do that. I have noticed online that there is a few people who've had a go at this, and I think they've enjoyed it and given it a good play. I'd be interested to see other games. I don't know everybody's experience, but I've always been a bit of a fan of infantry-based combat, and this Crete game, you'd have to say, is pretty much an infantry-based game. It is mostly infantry against infantry. But I could see the armour anti-tank working quite well as well. It's an interesting little mechanic. It's a good way of adding this extra piece into it. There's lots of little bits of flavour, and I think that's all we can ever ask for in a game of this type. To give you that feel of that Second World War combat, the command control issues, the action of tanks and anti-tank, and the artillery and Stukas in this case for the Germans. Very interesting, a great little game. As I said, quick to play. Maybe again, that's something that if you wanted to be picky about it, there's the actual scenarios are based on the sections that we've seen, like Malemi, etc. There is that early end, if you like, that if it hasn't gone well for the Germans, you will probably be forced to quit at the end of that first night. But perhaps well, I guess it's balanced by the speed of play. I was going to say, you know, you're looking at the scenario as having quite a number of turns, but actually you can rattle through turns. And I guess once the hand's gone, again, and you're drawing, if you were trying to be the Commonwealth and trying to do too much, it wouldn't take much for you to get a zero activation, and you know that would flick you through turns quite dramatically too. So very interesting. I didn't even touch there, I think, on the defensive fire. You know, the fact that even though one player is the initiative player, the defensive player still has options. They've got their defensive fire and they've got that retreat option. Very interesting. Clever little game.